The gathering storm. The crystalline towers of Zenith Prime sparkled beneath three suns as delegates from 27 species gathered in the Grand Assembly. The Galactic Coalition had ruled this sector for 5 millennia. Yet today, an unusual tension filled the air. Admiral Xerion of the Valeri stood at the center podium, his 4 arms gesturing toward a massive holographic display showing human-occupied space. "The humans continue their withdrawal," Xerion announced, his melodic voice carrying across the chamber. 17 systems abandoned in the past lunar cycle. Our intelligence suggests fear has finally gripped these newcomers. Captain Cora of the Thrakari military caste shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Unlike many present, she had studied human history extensively. The pattern didn't match what she knew of their nature. Humans were notorious for their stubbornness, their willingness to fight against impossible odds. This retreat felt calculated, deliberate. "With respect, Admiral," Cora spoke, her scaled skin reflecting the chamber's lights. "The humans have never shown cowardice in their brief time among the stars. Perhaps we should consider this might be strategic withdrawal rather than fear." A ripple of dismissive laughter crossed the assembly. General Morvac of the Drain Empire stood, his massive frame dwarfing even the largest delegates. "Captain Cora speaks of strategy when facing primitives who have barely mastered fusion drives. The Coalition's might has never been challenged. These humans simply recognize the inevitable." The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was predetermined. The Coalition would advance, claiming the abandoned human territories. Cora remained silent for the remainder, her tactical instincts screaming warnings that fell on deaf ears. 3 days later, the Coalition's 7th Fleet entered the first abandoned human system. The stellar fortress commanded by Admiral Xerion led the formation, surrounded by hundreds of warships representing the Coalition's finest. The system appeared exactly as reported. Empty orbital stations, evacuated colonies, no defensive positions. "Scan results confirm previous reports," announced Commander Velix, the fleet's senior analyst. "No human vessels detected. Minor energy traces suggest they departed approximately 10 days ago." Xerion nodded, satisfaction evident in his posture. "Begin deployment protocols. Establish our claim beacons and prepare occupation forces for the colonies." The process repeated across 5 more systems over the following weeks. Each time, the humans had vanished without resistance, leaving behind only empty shells of their former presence. Yet something gnawed at Cora's mind as she reviewed sensor logs from her destroyer. The Swift Strike. "Lieutenant Dex," she called to her second-in-command. "Analyze these energy readings from the outer system. Do they match standard human drive signatures?" The young officer bent over the console, his antennae twitching with concentration. "Negative, Captain. The patterns are strange. They almost seem to fade in and out of our detection range, like echoes rather than actual emissions." Before Cora could respond, alarms shrieked across the ship. The tactical display showed 3 Coalition scouts on the fleet's perimeter had stopped transmitting. No distress signals, no debris fields, they simply ceased to exist on sensors. "Fleet Command is calling it sensor malfunction," Dex reported, monitoring the communications. Admiral Xerion orders continued advance. Cora's instincts screamed louder. She opened a private channel to Captain Thorne of the Vigilant, one of the few commanders who shared her concerns. "Are you seeing these disappearances, Thorne?" "Indeed," came the gravelly response. "My science officer detected quantum fluctuations moments before we lost the scouts. Whatever's happening, it's not equipment failure." The fleet pressed deeper into human space, now approaching the Kepler system where intelligence suggested humans had maintained a significant presence until recently. As they entered the outer system, more ships began reporting unusual sensor phenomena. Ghostly contacts that appeared and vanished, energy spikes that defied conventional physics. Then came the message. Every screen, every communication device across the entire Coalition fleet displayed the same words simultaneously. "You sought to understand our nature. Prepare to learn." Admiral Xirian's voice boomed across fleet channels. Maintain formation. This is psychological warfare, nothing more. The humans resort to tricks because they lack true power. But Cora noticed something the Admiral missed. Their navigational systems showed minute discrepancies. The stars weren't quite where they should be. Space itself seemed to ripple at the edges of perception. Captain, Lieutenant Dex's voice carried an edge of fear. I'm detecting massive quantum distortions throughout the system. It's as if space-time itself is being manipulated. The tactical display suddenly exploded with contacts, thousands of them, appearing and disappearing like fireflies in a storm. Yet no single contact remained solid long enough to target. The Coalition's advanced sensors, capable of tracking objects across light years, couldn't lock onto anything. "What are we seeing?" whispered a junior officer. Cora stood slowly, understanding dawning like a cold sun. "We're seeing the evolution of warfare. The humans didn't retreat from fear. They lured us into their web." A new message appeared. "You know combat as ships meeting in battle. We have transcended such limitations. Behold the Void Dancer." The space around the Coalition fleet began to shimmer. What appeared to be empty vacuum revealed itself as a living network of microscopic nodes, each phasing in and out of reality. Together, they formed a massive pattern that defied conventional understanding of matter and energy. 20 Coalition ships vanished in the first minute, not destroyed, simply removed from local spacetime. Their crews would later be found unharmed on a moon in the previous system, deposited there through means that violated every known law of physics. Admiral Xirian's confident commands turned to confused orders as his mighty dreadnought systems began failing in sequence, not from damage, but from an inability to process the reality-bending phenomenon surrounding them. "All ships, emergency withdrawal," Xirian finally commanded, his melodic voice cracking with unprecedented fear. But the Void Dancer had already taught its first lesson. The Coalition fleet found themselves unable to engage their faster-than-light drives. Space itself had become a cage, twisted by human understanding of quantum mechanics into something that trapped the mighty armada without firing a single conventional weapon. Captain Cora watched from her bridge as reality itself became humanity's weapon. The reports she had studied spoke of human adaptability, their gift for turning any situation to their advantage. She hadn't imagined they would adapt the very fabric of existence into their arsenal. "Captain," Dex reported, his voice small, "I'm receiving a direct transmission. It's addressed to you personally." The screen flickered, revealing a human face, middle-aged, scared, with eyes that held both determination and compassion. "Captain Cora of the Thrakari, our records show you understood our nature better than your peers. Would you speak with us?" Cora straightened her uniform, ignoring the chaos of fleet communications around her. "I would. Though I suspect this conversation will reshape everything we thought we knew about warfare." The human smiled grimly. "That, Captain, is precisely our intention. Welcome to humanity's dance with the void." As the Coalition fleet struggled against bonds of twisted spacetime, Cora realized the age of conventional warfare had ended. Humanity hadn't just adapted to space combat, they had redefined its very nature. The dreaded ship they sought didn't exist, because humanity had become something far more profound, masters of reality itself. The Void Dancer continued its silent symphony around the trapped fleet, each phase shift demonstrating that true power lay not in the size of one's weapons, but in the depth of one's understanding. The Coalition had sought to crush what they saw as primitive newcomers. Instead, they had awakened something that would forever change the balance of power among the stars. Dance of Shadows. Captain Cora stood alone in the Swift Strike's observation deck, watching the impossible unfold before her eyes. The Void Dancer, if such a term could even apply to what she witnessed, continued its reality-bending performance around the trapped Coalition fleet. Space itself had become humanity's canvas, painted with quantum uncertainties and dimensional fluctuations that defied millennia of established physics. The human commander's image remained on her private screen, waiting patiently as she processed what she observed. Finally, she turned to face him. "I am Commander Marcus Chen," he introduced himself. "Former professor of quantum mechanics, now something quite different. You wanted to understand our nature, Captain. Are you prepared for that understanding?" "My people pride themselves on adaptation," Cora replied, her scales shifting to a neutral gray. "But this challenges everything we believed possible." Chen nodded gravely. 3 years ago, when the Coalition began its aggressive expansion toward human space, we faced a choice. Meet you with conventional forces we couldn't match, or evolve beyond the paradigm of traditional warfare entirely. The screen split, showing Chen alongside technical diagrams that hurt to look at directly. The Void Dancer isn't a ship, weapon, or even a technology in the sense you understand. It's a distributed consciousness network, millions of humans linked through quantum entanglement, existing partially outside normal spacetime. Cora felt her secondary heart begin to race. "You transformed your own people into what? Living weapons." "Living evolution," Chen corrected gently. "Volunteers all, trained to perceive reality differently. We learned to step sideways through dimensions, to exist in quantum superposition. Your fleet sought one mighty ship because that's how you think. Bigger, stronger, more powerful. We became something that exists everywhere and nowhere simultaneously." Around them, the chaos continued. Admiral Xirian's dreadnought fired its primary weapons into empty space, targeting phantoms that dissolved before impact. Other Coalition ships attempted various countermeasures, from gravitational pulses to electromagnetic storms, all equally futile against an enemy that existed between the spaces of reality. The missing scout ships, Cora realized. You didn't destroy them. Correct. Their crews are safe, transported to secured locations. We have no desire for casualties, Captain. This demonstration serves one purpose, to show the Coalition that the era of might makes right has ended. Through the observation port, Cora watched as another Coalition cruiser simply shifted. One moment it was there. The next it existed several light seconds away, its crew undoubtedly confused but unarmed. The precision required for such manipulation boggled her military mind. "How many?" she asked quietly. "How many humans have become part of this Void Dancer?" "Currently, approximately 3 million. But that number grows as more volunteers complete the consciousness expansion training. We discovered that human neural plasticity, combined with our species' unusual relationship with quantum observation, allows us to achieve what other species cannot." The implication struck Cora like a physical blow. "You're saying humans are uniquely suited for this transformation?" Chen's expression grew thoughtful. "Not uniquely, but particularly adapted. Your own species, with their natural phase-shifting abilities, might achieve something similar given time and motivation. The Exarathi, with their hive mind structure, could potentially create an even more unified version. But humans, we're chaos incarnate, yet somehow we make it work." A priority message flashed on Cora's command console. Admiral Xirian, his composed demeanor shattered, appeared on the screen. "All ships, implement Protocol 7. Maximum firepower, saturate the entire sector." "Admiral." "Wait," Cora began, but the command had already propagated through the fleet. Space lit up as hundreds of Coalition vessels unleashed their arsenals simultaneously. Antimatter torpedoes, plasma cannons, gravity weapons. Enough firepower to crack planets poured into the void. The Void Dancer's response was elegant in its simplicity. The weapons fire began to curve, twist, loop back on itself. Torpedoes emerged from micro-wormholes to strike empty space. Energy beams refracted through dimensional lenses, creating a lethal light show that threatened the firing ships more than their target. "Impressive," Chen commented, watching the display, "but ultimately futile. You cannot destroy what exists partially outside your dimensional framework." "Then what do you want?" Cora demanded. "If not our destruction, what's the purpose of this display?" For the first time, Chen smiled warmly. "Understanding. The coalition expanded through force because that's all you knew. We offer an alternative. Cooperation based on mutual respect rather than fear. But first, old paradigms must be broken. The weapons fire gradually ceased as coalition commanders realized the futility of their actions. In the sudden quiet, a new phenomenon began. The Void Dancer's countless nodes pulsed in synchronization, creating patterns of light that seemed to speak directly to the mind rather than the eyes. Images formed in the quantum foam, not of war or conquest, but of potential futures. Cora saw visions of species working together, sharing knowledge and resources. Technologies that merged different approaches to create something greater than the sum of parts. Humans working alongside Thrakari engineers, Veleri artists collaborating with human musicians, Drain philosophers debating human scientists. A galaxy where diversity became strength rather than a source of conflict. This is what we offer. Chen's voice carried new intensity, not domination, but partnership. The coalition's age of expansion through force ends today. Those who wish to join us in building something better are welcome. Those who cling to the old ways will find themselves increasingly isolated in a universe that has moved beyond them. Admiral Xirian's voice crackled across the fleet channels, defeated and confused. What are your terms? A new figure appeared alongside Chen, a woman with silver hair and eyes that seemed to hold starlight. I am Admiral Sarah Eco, speaking for the United Human Consciousness. Our terms are simple. Immediate cessation of all expansion through military force, reparations to species previously conquered by the coalition, and establishment of a new galactic council where all member species have equal voice, regardless of military might. The coalition delegates erupted in protests, but Cora noticed something crucial. Their weapons remained powerless, their ships still trapped in the Void Dancer's quantum embrace. The demonstration had proven its point absolutely. And if we refuse? General Morvac's defiant voice boomed across the channels. The space around his massive battleship shimmered, without violence or explosion. The vessel simply elsewhered. A moment later, confirmation came through. The ship had been instantaneously transported back to drain space, its entire crew unharmed, but effectively removed from the equation. Refusal is certainly your right, Admiral Eco replied calmly. But you'll find advancing your agendas through force increasingly difficult when space itself opposes you. Over the following hours, Cora watched the coalition's mighty facade crumble. Species after species agreed to humanity's terms, recognizing that the fundamental rules had changed. Some acted from fear, others from genuine understanding that a new era had dawned. When her turn came to speak for the Thrakari, Cora stood proudly. My people have always believed in evolution and adaptation. Today, humanity has shown us the next step in that evolution. The Thrakari accept your terms and look forward to learning from this new perspective. Chen nodded respectfully. Your wisdom does you credit, Captain. We have much to learn from each other. As agreements were finalized, and the coalition fleet prepared for departure under radically different circumstances than their arrival, Cora received a private message from Commander Chen. When you return to Zenith Prime, there will be those who resist this change. They'll speak of honor, tradition, the glory of conquest. Remember this day. Remember that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to transform conflict into cooperation. The Void Dancer began to fade, its quantum nodes dissolving back into the hidden dimensions from which they'd emerge. But Cora understood the truth. They hadn't disappeared. Humanity's evolved consciousness remained, watching, ready to resurface if the old ways threatened to return. As the swift strike prepared for departure, Lieutenant Dex approached his captain. Sir, our sensors can't explain what we witnessed today. By every law of physics we know, it should have been impossible. Cora's scales shifted to a pattern of satisfaction. Then perhaps it's time we learn new laws, Lieutenant. The humans have shown us that the universe is far stranger and more wonderful than we imagined. Our ancestors would have called this magic. we have the privilege of calling it the future. The journey back to Coalition space passed in contemplation. The mighty fleet that had set out to claim human territory by force returned as harbingers of a new age. The dreaded ship they had sought never existed, because humanity had become something far more profound. Architects of a new reality where cooperation replaced conquest, where wisdom trumped warfare. Captain Cora looked back once at the Kepler system as they engaged their jump drives. Somewhere in that seemingly empty space, 3 million human consciousnesses danced between dimensions, guardians of a new peace. The Coalition had thought they understood combat until they faced those who had transcended it entirely. As space folded around the swift strike, carrying them toward a radically different future, Cora allowed herself a small smile. The humans hadn't just won a battle or even a war. They had changed the very nature of conflict itself, and in doing so, they had given the galaxy something it had never truly known: hope for a future where strength meant lifting others up rather than striking them down. The Void Dancer's legacy would ripple across the stars for generations to come, remembered not as a weapon of war, but as humanity's greatest gift to the cosmos. Proof that evolution of consciousness could triumph over the primitive impulse to dominate through force. The dreaded ship had been something far more powerful, a mirror that showed the galaxy what it could become. Retroclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.